This weekend is the premiere weekend for Thor Ragnarok. This is the third Thor movie in the franchise. And, alright. So, normally we would go over the plot.
Generally nerdy.
But there's not. Oh man, Marvel, you're killing me. There's not a whole lot to go over when it comes to the plot. So I ran into an issue with this movie in the middle of watching it. So usually even the less than great Marvel movies are at least entertaining enough so that you can get to the end and then go, "Wait a minute, there was no substance to that." Um but this one, about 3/4 of the way through it, I realized, wow, we are into Act 3, possibly. I was figuring we were towards the end of Act 2, towards the beginning of Act 3, somewhere in that neighborhood, just based on the time. There was no indication on the screen that we had moved into, just. Just the storytelling, the method of storytelling was not. There was no real rising action. Let's put it that way. I feel like there was a distinct cut between Act 1 and Act 2, which is when Loki and Thor both get pushed out of that like teleport thing that they use to get to Asgard. Oh, by the way, spoilers ahead. If you haven't seen Thor Ragnarok, why are you watching a review on it? If you are just looking to see if it's worth it to go watch, wait until it's in the dollar theater, until it's in the cheap theater. I would not pay full price to go see this movie if you are looking for a quality movie. If you're looking for mindless entertainment, just ooh shiny, then have at it, pay what you will. But if you just like watching the Marvel movies, this is not one of the better ones. So wait until it gets into the cheap theaters. Definitely give them some money, just don't give them all your money. Anyway, continuing on. So there was a definite Act 1 break. We got a break from Act 1 into Act 2. There was a distinct line where you say, okay, now we have a little bit of motion. But by the time there's no Act 3, there's no line. You get the sense that by the end of the movie you're into Act 3 because they're fighting Hela, but it doesn't feel cohesive or it feels too cohesive, I guess. Usually not realizing how much time has passed is a good thing. I said it before about The Dark Knight, is every time I watch The Dark Knight, I forget that it's 2+ hours and just realize it's a fantastic movie. Now, this movie, it felt like 20 minutes had passed and we were almost to Act 3. It's not good. So I was talking to my dad, and he asked what I thought of the movie, and I said it was kind of silly, and he said, "Yeah, I agree." And then my analogy past that was, it's like everyone has that friend who is really funny, legitimately cracks funny jokes, but also doesn't know when to stop cracking jokes. And that's the issue that Thor suffers from. Now, everyone always commends Marvel for their sense of humor, especially the Disney Marvel movies, because the mutant Marvel movies, the Fox stuff, definitely takes itself a lot more serious. Not as serious as DC has, until recently, but definitely takes itself a lot more serious than Disney does. So Disney Marvel movies have always been commended for their sense of humor. This movie takes that commendation and just rolls in it. Like it's a bed full of money and it's a bad 80s drama. Granted, there are a lot of parts where you laugh out loud because it's funny. There are also some interesting action sequences, but in the opening sequence, we are completely green screen and completely CGI, and it's painfully obvious. Once we get to Planet Sakaar, um, again we're inundated with a lot of CGI, but it's less so. But there are scenes where it's like, wow, that looked like a video game and not like a $1 million Hollywood movie. So I don't know. I feel like the technical aspects are slipping. Chris Hemsworth he's a great Thor. In the first two Thor movies, there's a lot of solid moments from Hemsworth. Now, into the third movie, there's a lot less of the. There's still the same. Let's take it this way. There's still the same level of fish out of waterness associated with Thor in this movie as there are in the first two movies, which doesn't fit. And it definitely takes you away from your suspension of disbelief because they're all fish out of water. On planet Sakaar, nobody is born there, is what we're led to believe. This is a planet that exists outside of regular time. And so everyone accidentally finds themselves there. So all of the fish out of water jokes and all of these I don't belong jokes that they made in the first two movies, not only did they ramp up the amount of those jokes, but it also falls flat because, yeah, Hulk is a fish out of water, and Loki is a fish out of water, and technically Jeff Goldblum's Grandmaster is a fish out of water. So beat a different dead horse? I don't know. It's like I said, there are some funny moments, but they were relying more on the humor than the storytelling or the writing or the direction or the acting. There's no real challenges to these actors either. There's nothing that that you forget that that's Mark Ruffalo playing the Hulk, even when he's the freaking Hulk. And I mean, that's kind of a commendation to the technical side of things. Is the Hulk looks great, kind of, until they get really close to him, and it's like, oh yeah, that's we're watching a video game again, aren't we? So I don't know. It's a total mixed bag. This movie. I can't with good conscience recommend anyone go see this movie on opening weekend. I honestly kind of wish I hadn't seen this movie on opening weekend. Storyline wise, there is another issue with this. Now, in somewhere in Act 2, because like I said, Act 2 is so long and ambiguous, it feels like it is the majority of this movie. So at some point in Act 2, probably towards the end of Act 2, Odin dies. And it's all of... I mean, Anthony Hopkins probably has 5 minutes of screen time in this movie. And that's including the flashbacks towards the end after he's dead. So, so there is... Loki has taken over in Asgard because everyone thinks Loki's dead. So Loki found a way to banish Odin to Earth. And Odin's cool with it. He wants to be retired, I guess, in a way. Is kind of the sense that you get. And that's kind of what they say as well. Thor comes back to Asgard with the helmet of what is it? Surtur. Surtur. So Thor has defeated Surtur, whatever, and has the helmet or the mask or what the crown. I don't know what it's supposed to be, and is taking it to the trophy room in Asgard. And he doesn't realize what Loki has done. So Loki is masquerading as Odin, and there's the first legit laugh moment is when, well, I mean, there's a couple towards the beginning when Thor is fighting Surtur, whatever. Um, there's a couple of kind of groany but still funny moments, but then like the first legit laugh moment is we get to Asgard and everybody's really lax and chilling, and we see Odin sitting on a lounge watching a play about the death of Loki and how Loki was such a hero and how he's got all of Asgard believing that Loki died in honor of Asgard and not because he was a Weasley little jerk. So Thor sees this play going on, and the moment that I'm talking about where it's a legit laugh moment is we see that Loki is being played by Matt Damon, and Thor is being played by Hemsworth's brother. Which brother is, I can't remember. Luke. Luke Hemsworth is playing Thor in this play, so it's, I don't know, it's pretty funny. Anyway, Matt Damon as Loki is fantastic because he's dying and Thor's holding him and the wig's coming off. Anyway, so Thor realizes that that's not really Odin, and he tries to get Loki to reveal himself to everybody, and it's this whole thing. Anyway, that's a long way to say that Loki is masquerading as Odin, and so Thor puts the mask of Surtur into the trophy room, and they go find Odin. And wait, maybe it was towards the beginning of Act 2. Nope. It was right at the end of Act 1. It was not even in Act 2. Anyway, so they go to Earth and they search for Odin, and Doctor Strange kidnaps Loki, and that's another pretty good scene. But that's because we get Benedict Cumberbatch back as Doctor Strange, and so he gets to be the straight man, and then Hemsworth's fish out of water stuff is more appropriate, and it's less pronounced. Like, I feel like because they're playing, well, he's used to being on Earth now, so we can't make those jokes as much. They should have taken that thought and did through the rest of them anyway. So Cumberbatch is in as Strange again, and Thor and Strange are talking because Strange has Loki in a prison cell, effectively, where he's constantly falling, and he knows where Odin is, and so he teleports Loki and Thor to Odin, and so they're sitting on this rock with Odin, looking out over the sea, and they're talking to him about how he has to come back, and Hela is it's oh man, Hela is on the way, and the only thing that's keeping her in her prison cell effectively is the fact that Odin is alive, and Odin's talking about how he's ready to move on and how he hears their mother calling him every day, and then he dies, and that's 3 minutes of time, probably maybe 5, but it's about 3. It feels like it's short. It could be a little bit longer than that, but in the grand scheme of the movie, it barely even registers on the time count. So Odin dies and like becomes a Force ghost. Like, I mixing my Disney properties, but he like turns into this gold dust and then flies away, and that's him dying. and there's no gravity. We've spent 2 movies with this character. He's the father of our primary protagonist, and he decides to give up the ghost, very literally, and that's all the time we spend on it. There's very little grieving time. It's almost immediately after he disappears, this black portal opens and Hela steps through, and then we're into, that's like the beginning of the transition from Act 1 to Act 2. And so they're trying to get back, and as they're going back, Loki screws it up, and then they're fighting with Hela in the transport portal thing, and she pushes them out of the time warp. Let's do the time warp again. No. And it's just, it's sad. Anyway, so we get a couple of flashbacks with Odin after he's dead, towards the end of the movie, when he thinks he can't get out of Sakaar, and all the Hulk battle between Thor and Hulk. They give us all of those details in the previews, so none of that is new. There was no surprise with the when Hulk comes on screen. We're not surprised. We know what's going to happen. And when they're talking about the Grandmaster's champion, oh my champion, he's undefeated. Oh my champion, oh my champion. We know it's the Hulk. So why all of the oh my champion stuff? Just say the Hulk. Because you already killed that reveal in the previews. That whole battle is killed in the previews. The only thing that's surprising is how it ends, kind of, and there's no real ending to it. And so they're trying to get off the planet because the Grandmaster has them all basically slaves, and so no one can leave the planet unless he lets them, and he doesn't let anybody leave the planet, and that's a whole ordeal. But again, nothing really difficult storytelling wise. Like, we know how it's going to end before we know what the problem is. Like, we know the resolution before we even know the problem. So that was really disappointing. We finally get back to Asgard, and there's the battle, and they subdue Hela, and then they sick the Surtur on her, and the Surtur just destroys Asgard, and so Hela has nothing to rule over because they've escaped. And then we get 2 post-credit scenes because it's Disney Marvel, and that's what they do. So one is just Thor's hammer, the Molinar, flying through space, and that's kind of whatever. I'm not entirely sure what that is. I know there's a lot of theories on YouTube. What do you guys feel is the significance of Molinar flying through space? Is it just did it reassemble itself somehow and it's going to meet Thor wherever he is? And then the second post-credit scene is Grandmaster dealing with the uprising that was started when Thor and Hulk were on the planets, Sator, whatever. It's irrelevant because it doesn't matter. So this is the Grandmaster dealing with that uprising still, and those are the 2 post-credit scenes. So again, I'm gonna say it because it needs to be said. This movie is really not worth your money. It's worth a watch if you don't have to pay, or if you pay very little. Wait until it comes out on Netflix, to be quite honest. Other than that, man, I appreciate you guys very much for watching all the way to the end of this video. I know sometimes I kind of ramble and talk around myself, and even can probably be a little confusing, but I feel like we have good conversations. So, did you guys like Thor Ragnarok? If you did, let's talk about it. If you didn't, let's talk about it. Did you guys like this review? Definitely leave those comments down low. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. If you don't like what I'm doing here, hit the unlike button. Just give me some feedback. That being said, I really appreciate you guys coming. The website is generallynerdy.net. The Patreon is patreon.com/generallynerdy. And I must remind you guys, because that's what I do, always remember that if it's generally nerdy, it's probably here.